Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Marriage and divorce laws vary significantly by state and individual circumstance. We are not attorneys, and the content presented here should not be used as a substitute for consultation with a qualified legal professional. Every viewer is strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and seek independent counsel regarding their specific situation before making any decisions that could impact their legal status or financial future. In the next 60 minutes, everything you thought you knew about the American family structure is going to be challenged. We are currently witnessing the greatest cultural pivot in the history of the United States. While our grandparents viewed a broken marriage as a permanent stain on one's character, a modern American moves through a divorce with the same calculated efficiency as a corporate restructuring. The stigma is dead, and in its place is a multi-billion-dollar industry designed for speed, efficiency, and what many are calling the divorce now process. We are living in an era where social media influencers throw divorce parties that garner more engagement than their wedding photos, and where the phrase "until death do us part" is being replaced by "until our personal growth paths diverge." This is not just about a change in laws. It is about a fundamental rewiring of the American psyche. We are moving away from the collective endurance of the 20th century and toward a radical individual self-actualization that views any contract, including marriage, as a temporary vehicle for personal happiness. If you are not paying attention to this shift, you are missing the most significant social evolution of our lifetime. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on why this is happening, the data that proves it, and the historical trends that led us to this exact moment. By the end of this deep dive masterclass, you will understand the intricate mechanics of the modern U.S. divorce landscape. This is for the person who feels the weight of cultural expectations but sees the reality of the statistics. This is for the individual who wants to understand the potential outcomes of the divorce now movement and how it is reshaping the economy, the legal system, and our very definition of success. We are solving the mystery of why American culture has pivoted from shaming the separated to celebrating the emancipated. To understand where we are, we have to look at the historical trends that shattered the old foundation. For decades, the American marriage was an institution built on economic necessity and social stability. In the 1950s, the divorce rate was a fraction of what it is today because the exit costs were not just financial, they were total. A divorced woman faced immediate economic peril and social ostracization. A divorced man faced a glass ceiling in the corporate world, as he was seen as someone who couldn't manage his own household. But then came 1969. When California signed the first no-fault divorce law, the dam didn't just leak, it burst. This legislative shift reflected a growing cultural sentiment that no one should be forced to prove a crime like adultery or abandonment just to regain their personal freedom. This was the birth of the divorce now mindset. It signaled a transition from institutional marriage, where the goal was to uphold the family unit at all costs, to companionate marriage, where the primary goal was emotional satisfaction. Case studies from the 1970s and 80s show a massive spike in filings as people who had been trapped for years finally saw an open door. But what we are seeing today is different. The modern divorce now process is not just about the legal right to leave, it is about the cultural speed at which we expect that departure to happen. We live in a society of instant gratification. We want our food delivered in 20 minutes, our information in seconds, and our freedom as soon as we realize a relationship is no longer serving us. This acceleration has created a new set of cultural norms, where the duration of a marriage is no longer the metric for its success. Instead, the metric is the quality of the exit. Consider the data from the National Center for Health Statistics. While the overall divorce rate has actually stabilized or slightly dipped for younger generations, the complexity and the acceptance of the process have skyrocketed. We are seeing the rise of the silver divorce, where couples over the age of 50 are choosing to end 30-year marriages at record rates. Why? Because the cultural norm has shifted to prioritize the third act of life. These are individuals who have seen their children grow up and have decided that the remaining 20 or 30 years of their lives are too valuable to spend in a state of stagnant coexistence. They are leaning into the divorce now process because they have the financial independence and the social backing to do so. The economic factor cannot be overstated. In previous generations, the breadwinner homemaker model created a barrier of entry to the legal system. Today, with the rise of female financial independence and the dual-income household, the power dynamics have shifted. When both parties are earners, the fear of total financial ruin is mitigated by the potential outcomes of a clean, mediated break. We are seeing a shift toward collaborative law and digital filing systems that bypass the years of litigation that used to define the process. This is the Divorce Now engine in action. A streamlined, professionalized, and culturally sanitized version of what used to be a social nightmare. We are also seeing a radical shift in how we handle the concept of failure. In the high-stakes world of U.S. career culture, failure is often rebranded as a pivot. We see this in Silicon Valley, where a failed startup is a badge of honor, a sign that you took a risk and learned a lesson. This same philosophy has bled into our romantic lives. A marriage that ends after 10 years is no longer viewed as 10 years wasted. It is viewed as a decade of growth that has now reached its natural conclusion. This cultural rebrand is a core component of the Divorce Now process. It allows individuals to move forward without the crushing weight of societal shame, which in turn speeds up the decision-making process. But this isn't just about the individuals. It's about the industry that has risen to meet them. From divorce registries where friends buy the departing spouse new kitchenware, to apps that manage co-parenting schedules with the precision of a project management tool, the infrastructure of separation has become sophisticated. We are going to explore how this infrastructure influences our decisions. Does the ease of the process make us more likely to pull the trigger? Or does it simply provide a safer landing for those who were already falling? Throughout this series, we are going to examine the psychological impact of this cultural acceptance. We will look at how the Divorce Now process affects children, not through the lens of trauma, but through the lens of modern co-parenting trends. We will look at the financial realities of the 2020s, where inflation and the housing market are actually creating new unconventional ways for people to divorce now while still sharing a mortgage. This is a deep dive into the reality of American life, stripped of the Hollywood tropes and the outdated stigmas. The promise of this masterclass is simple. We are going to give you the blueprint of the modern American cultural landscape. Whether you are in a happy marriage, considering a change, or simply a student of human behavior, understanding the Divorce Now process is essential for navigating the social and economic world of today. We are moving past the surface-level headlines and into the deep, often uncomfortable truths about why we choose to stay, why we choose to leave, and how the United States became the global leader in the evolution of the exit strategy. Welcome to Part 1. The journey into the heart of modern American marriage starts now. To understand the shift in the American psyche in 2026, we have to look at how we value time. In the past, the primary metric of a successful life was longevity. We celebrated the 50-year anniversary with more vigor than the wedding itself because endurance was the highest virtue. But today, the cultural currency has changed from endurance to optimization. Americans are no longer asking how long can I make this last, but rather is this the best use of my remaining time? This is the foundation of the Divorce Now process. It is a transition from a marathon mindset to a series of high-intensity sprints. Imagine a woman named Sarah living in suburban Charlotte in 2026. She is 42 years old, a successful project manager for a remote tech firm, and has been married for 15 years. In 1996, if Sarah felt a sense of quiet desperation, she would likely have been told to pray, go to more therapy, or just wait for the feeling to pass. The cultural norm was to suffer in silence for the sake of the neighborhood's perception. But in 2026, Sarah's social media feed is filled with high-production videos of women, her age rebranding their lives. She sees case studies of peers who pivoted at 40 and are now thriving in new careers, new cities, and new relationships. The psychological barrier of being a divorcee has not just lowered, it has been replaced by the concept of the midlife launch. This leads us to the death of the sunk cost fallacy in American relationships. For decades, the logic was that because you had already invested 10 or 20 years, you had to stay to make that investment worth it. In the modern era, we apply the logic of a failing stock to our personal lives. If a position is down and the outlook is poor, the smart move in 2026 is to cut your losses and reinvest your capital elsewhere. In this case, the capital is your emotional energy and your remaining years of health and vitality. This pragmatic, almost cold-blooded efficiency is a hallmark of the Divorce Now movement. It is not about a lack of emotion. It is about an abundance of self-preservation. We must also examine the data regarding the normalization of the short-term contract mindset. In the U.S. labor market, the average person now changes jobs every 4 years. This fluidity has bled into our domestic expectations. We no longer expect a single employer to provide for us for 40 years. So why would we expect a single partner to meet every emotional, physical, and intellectual need for 60 years? The Divorce Now process acknowledges that humans are dynamic beings who outgrow their environments. When a marriage is viewed as a vehicle for growth rather than a static cage, the act of leaving becomes a logical step in personal evolution. Consider the role of technology in accelerating this process. In 2026, we have access to AI-driven mediation platforms that can settle a standard asset division in 48 hours. These tools remove the high-friction, high-conflict middleman that used to make divorce a multi-year nightmare. When the technical process becomes as easy as clicking a few buttons on a dashboard, the psychological threshold for making the decision drops significantly. We are seeing a rise in what sociologists call the frictionless exit. This is a case study in how infrastructure dictates behavior. Because it is easier to leave, people are more willing to acknowledge when they are unhappy. Let's look at a different demographic: the 2026 American male. Take David, a 55-year-old executive in Austin. Historically, men like David stayed in mediocre marriages because they feared the financial hit and the loss of access to their children. But with the widespread adoption of 50-50 default custody laws across many U.S. states and the normalization of the dual-income household, David's fear has been mitigated. He sees potential outcomes where he maintains a strong relationship with his kids while regaining his personal autonomy. He isn't looking for a 25-year-old replacement. He is looking for a quiet apartment, a gym membership, and the ability to reclaim his identity outside of being a provider. This is the silver pivot, a trend that is currently reshaping the luxury real estate and solo travel markets. This shift is also driven by the sheer transparency of the modern world. We are the most documented generation in history. When every moment of your life is recorded and shared, the gap between your public-facing happy family and your private reality becomes harder to maintain. The cognitive dissonance eventually becomes too heavy to carry. In 2026, the American public values authenticity over performance. It is seen as more honorable to admit a marriage has failed and move on than to stay in a lie for the sake of appearances. This is a radical departure from the mid-20th century norm of the kept secret. Furthermore, we need to talk about the economic engine of the divorce now movement. There is a massive industry that now profits from the end of marriages. We have divorce coaches, specialized real estate agents who only handle split asset sales, and financial planners who focus exclusively on post-divorce wealth building. These professionals don't treat divorce as a tragedy. They treat it as a transition. This professionalization of the process provides a safety net that didn't exist 20 years ago. When you have a team of experts telling you that you are going to be fine and showing you the data to prove it, the fear of the unknown disappears. But what about the impact on the community? In previous generations, the church or the local social club acted as a stabilizing force that pressured couples to stay together. In 2026, these institutions have largely been replaced by digital interest groups and professional networks. These new communities are often based on shared hobbies or career goals, rather than shared geography or tradition. In these circles, your marital status is a footnote, not the lead story. This lack of localized social pressure is a key driver in the acceptance of the divorce now process. You can change your status on a Saturday, and your professional network on LinkedIn won't even notice until you update your last name. We are seeing a trend where the 5-year marriage is being rebranded as a successful chapter. Imagine if we viewed a 5-year stint at Google as a failure because the person didn't stay there for 30 years. That would be absurd. In 2026, we are starting to apply that same logic to relationships. If two people spent 5 years together, raised a toddler, and supported each other through career moves, that is a success. The fact that it ended doesn't retroactively ruin those 5 years. This mindset shift is perhaps the most powerful tool in the divorce now arsenal because it removes the concept of wasted time. As we move forward in this masterclass, we have to ask, if the social stigma is gone and the legal process is streamlined, what is the actual cost of leaving? Is there a hidden tax that the divorce now movement isn't telling us about? We have looked at the psychological freedom and the cultural acceptance, but the financial reality of 2026 presents a much more complex picture. In a world of high interest rates and a volatile housing market, the logistics of actually physically separating are becoming the final frontier of the marriage contract. This brings us to a startling new phenomenon that is currently sweeping across major U.S. cities. People are choosing to be legally divorced but still living under the same roof. They are separated in every sense of the word, yet they are bound by the math of a 3% mortgage and the cost of 2 separate lives in a 2026 economy. This is where the cultural norm of acceptance hits the hard wall of economic reality. How are couples navigating this? How do you move on when your ex is still in the guest room? And more importantly, How is this hybrid lifestyle creating a brand new set of social rules that we are only just beginning to understand? In the next part, we are going to dive deep into the cold, hard numbers of the divorce now economy. We are going to look at the hidden costs, the strategic financial moves being made by the nation's top earners, and the secret reason why some of the most successful people in America are actually choosing to stay legally married while living completely separate lives. You won't want to miss the financial breakdown of the modern split. The financial landscape of 2026 has created a fascinating and often contradictory set of potential outcomes for the modern American couple. To truly understand the divorce now process, we have to look past the emotional liberation and stare directly at the balance sheet. In previous decades, the math was simpler. You sold the family home, split the equity, and each person moved into a smaller place. But in the current U.S. economy, that traditional path is often a fast track to financial regression. This has led to the rise of a new cultural norm, the strategic separation. Take the case study of Mark and Elena, a couple in their late 30s living in the high-growth tech corridor of Seattle. In 2021, they secured a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage at an incredibly low 2.8%. By 2026, the market has shifted dramatically, with prevailing mortgage rates hovering around 7% and housing inventory at historic lows. The cost of moving out has become a massive deterrent. If Mark and Elena were to divorce now in the traditional sense, selling their home would mean giving up a monthly payment of $2,400 for two separate payments that could easily exceed $4,000 each for significantly less space. This economic reality has birthed the phenomenon of bird nesting. Imagine if a couple decides to end their romantic partnership, but keeps the family home as a neutral base for their children. In this 2026 scenario, Mark and Elena don't sell. Instead, they rent a small one-bedroom apartment nearby. Mark stays in the big house with the kids for 3 days, while Elena stays in the apartment. Then they swap. The children never move. The low-interest mortgage is preserved. The divorce now mindset is satisfied emotionally and legally. But physically, the assets remain frozen in place. This is not just a niche trend. It is becoming a standard operating procedure for the American middle class who refuse to let a divorce destroy their hard-earned interest rates. Step by step, these couples are approaching their separations like corporate demergers. The first step is the internal financial audit. In the divorce now economy, this involves more than just listing bank accounts. Couples are now using specialized 2026 software to track every micro expense of the household. They determine a baseline for house maintenance, utilities, and child rearing. Step 2 is the creation of a shared operating account. This is a cold, clinical business arrangement. The romance is gone, the legal paperwork for separation is filed, but the joint account remains active to service the debt of the marriage's former life. Step 3 is the most culturally significant, the establishment of the social exit. Even while sharing a roof or a mortgage, the 2026 American public has become adept at ignoring the technicality of the living situation. If Elena goes on a date, her community doesn't view it as scandalous that she still shares a kitchen with her ex-husband. The cultural norm has evolved to prioritize the functional over the formal. We have collectively decided that if the math doesn't work for a physical move, the emotional move is still valid. Historical trends show us that the cost of living has always dictated the structure of the family. During the Great Depression, multi-generational housing became the norm out of necessity. In 2026, the high interest rate environment is forcing a similar level of creativity, but with a modern twist of individual autonomy. We are seeing potential outcomes where the legal industry is catching up. Some states are now seeing an increase in petitions for limited divorces or legal separations that allow couples to remain married for tax and insurance purposes, while being recognized as single entities for everything else. Consider the health insurance factor. In the United States, the link between employment, marriage, and healthcare is a powerful anchor. A case study of a freelance graphic designer who relies on their spouse's corporate insurance plan shows that a divorce now decision can carry a hidden tax of $12,000 a year in individual premium costs. In response, we are seeing the rise of the insurance-motivated marriage maintenance. This is where the couple is socially and emotionally divorced, perhaps even living with new partners, but they refuse to sign the final decree because the logistical cost of being a single healthcare consumer in 2026 is too high. This leads to a startling level of transparency. In previous generations, this would have been a shameful secret. In 2026, it is discussed openly at dinner parties. The conversation has shifted from "did you hear they are breaking up" to "did you hear how they are structuring their exit?" Success in a 2026 divorce is not measured by who got the house, but by who managed to preserve their lifestyle while gaining their freedom. We also have to look at the role of the 2026 gig economy in this process. With more Americans than ever working as independent contractors or in fractional leadership roles, the stability of the family unit has become a primary financial shield. When a couple decides to divorce now, they are often dismantling their most effective tax hedge. Step by step, financial advisors are now walking couples through the potential outcomes of filing jointly versus separately in a post-2025 tax code environment. Often, the advice is to stay legally tethered until a specific financial milestone is hit, such as the vesting of stock options or the sale of a business. This is the evolution of the American exit strategy. It is no longer a blind leap into the dark. It is a calculated, multi-year transition. We are seeing the death of the explosive, immediate walkout. The modern cultural norm is the phased withdrawal. It is the acknowledgement that while I no longer want to be your partner, I still need you as a co-signer. But what happens when this clinical approach meets the heat of a new romance? Imagine if Mark finds a new partner who is ready to build a life, but Mark is still financially entangled with Elena for the next 5 years because of that 2.8% interest rate. This is the new friction point in American dating. We are seeing a rise in pre-dating disclosures where individuals have to explain their complex financial and residential status before the first appetizer is even ordered. The acceptance of the divorce now process has created a secondary market of complex relationship statuses that our parents would find incomprehensible. As we look deeper into this, we have to realize that this financial pragmatism is changing the way we view the marriage contract itself. If the exit is this calculated, what does that say about the entry? Are we seeing a change in how the next generation approaches the legal union? If we have professionalized the end of marriage to this degree, the beginning of marriage must also be changing. In the next part, we are going to dive into the legal revolution that is currently sweeping the United States. We are going to look at the rise of the pre-planned exit and how 2026 lawmakers are responding to the demand for even faster, even more efficient ways to uncouple. We will explore the controversial legislation that could make the traditional divorce lawyer obsolete, and the secret reason why some states are fighting to keep the process slow and expensive. You will see how the very laws of the land are being rewritten to accommodate a nation that is ready to move on at the speed of a digital click. The transition from the mahogany-paneled courtrooms of the 20th century to the streamlined digital portals of 2026 marks the most significant legal restructuring in American history. We are witnessing the end of the adversarial age of divorce. For decades, the legal system was designed to be a speed bump, a series of hurdles intended to force couples into reflection, reconciliation, or at the very least, a slow and expensive war of attrition. But as we move deeper into 2026, those speed bumps are being paved over by a legislative movement that treats the dissolution of a marriage not as a moral failure to be litigated, but as an administrative task to be processed. Imagine a couple named Jessica and Marcus living in a state like Utah or Arizona, which in 2026 has fully leaned into the administrative divorce model. In the old world, Jessica and Marcus would have had to hire 2 separate attorneys, pay massive retainers, and wait for a court date that might be 6 months away. They would have had to sit in a room and argue over who gets the mid-century modern sofa or how to split the credit card points. But today, they log into a state-sanctioned secure portal. They are greeted not by a judge, but by an algorithmic mediator. This system analyzes their shared bank accounts, their property values, and their tax returns through a direct link to their financial institutions. Within 30 minutes, the system generates 3 potential outcomes for asset division based on state law and historical trends of similar cases. There is no shouting. There is no billable hour. There is only the divorce now efficiency. This shift toward the administrative model is driven by a startling statistic. In 2026, over 80% of divorces in the United States are uncontested. When both parties agree that the marriage is over, the state no longer sees a reason to intervene with a heavy hand. This has led to the rise of the no-wait decree. Historically, states like California or New York required a cooling-off period, sometimes lasting 6 months or even a year, before a divorce could be finalized. The intent was to prevent impulsive decisions. However, 2026 lawmakers are increasingly viewing these waiting periods as an infringement on personal liberty and an unnecessary economic burden. Case studies from states that have abolished these waiting periods show a significant decrease in domestic litigation and a faster stabilization of the individual households involved. Step by step, the process has become a model of user experience design. Step 1 is the digital identity verification, utilizing multi-factor authentication and biometric data to ensure both parties are who they say they are. Step 2 is the asset discovery phase, which in 2026 is largely automated through open banking protocols. Instead of months of discovery where lawyers hunt for hidden accounts, the software pulls a comprehensive financial snapshot in seconds. Step 3 is the algorithmic proposal. The system identifies equitable splits that have been upheld in previous cases, effectively removing the human bias and emotional volatility from the negotiation. Step 4 is the electronic signature and the immediate issuance of a digital decree. In some jurisdictions, a marriage that lasted 10 years can be legally ended in 10 days. However, this legal revolution is not universal, and the friction between different regions of the U.S. is creating a legal patchwork. While the West Coast and parts of the Southwest move toward the digital-first model, other states are engaged in what sociologists call the slow walk resistance. In these regions, legislators are fighting to keep the process expensive and time-consuming, arguing that making divorce too easy devalues the institution of marriage itself. They are introducing bills that mandate in-person counseling or require a higher burden of proof for the breakdown of the relationship. This has created a phenomenon known as the jurisdictional jump. Imagine a character named Robert who lives in a slow walk state. He sees the potential outcomes for his neighbors in more progressive jurisdictions and decides to establish residency in a divorce-now state just to access their streamlined system. This is the 2026 version of the Reno divorce of the 1940s, but instead of taking a train to Nevada, Robert is utilizing remote residency services and digital nomadic loopholes. This tension between state laws is forcing a national conversation about whether marriage should be governed by a uniform federal standard or remain a fragmented state-level contract. Beyond the dissolution of current marriages, we have to look at how these legal shifts are changing the way Americans enter into unions. The rise of the Sunset Clause prenup is a defining trend of 2026. In the past, a prenuptial agreement was seen as a cynical move, a sign that you didn't trust the relationship to last. Today, it is viewed as a responsible piece of financial planning, much like a will or a life insurance policy. But the 2026 version goes a step further. We are seeing the emergence of beta marriages, where couples sign a legal contract that automatically expires after 5 or 10 years, unless both parties actively choose to renew it. This is the ultimate expression of the divorce now culture, building the exit strategy into the entrance. It removes the trauma of the filing because the end is already scheduled. The legal industry is pivoting to support this, with firms offering renewal packages or transition services. This is not about a lack of love. It is about the 2026 American preference for clarity and consent over tradition and obligation. By treating marriage as a renewable lease rather than a permanent deed, the legal system is finally catching up to the fluid reality of modern life. Data from the American Bar Association shows a massive shift in how law students are specializing. There is a decline in traditional family law litigation and a surge in digital mediation and collaborative law. The lawyers of 2026 are becoming more like project managers and financial architects. They aren't training to fight in front of a jury. They are training to optimize the potential outcomes of a split so that both parties can maintain their upward mobility. They are learning how to untangle complex cryptocurrency portfolios and how to divide the intellectual property of a shared social media brand. But as we simplify the legal and financial exit, a massive question remains. We have made it easier than ever for the adults to move on, but what does this speed-driven culture do to the foundation of the family? We are creating a nation of two-home children who move between households with the same frequency as their parents move between jobs. The divorce now process is incredibly efficient for the individual, but is it sustainable for the next generation? In the next part, we are going to look at the psychological impact of the 2026 Divorce Now movement. We will explore the rise of the specialized co-parenting industry and how children are being raised in an era where family is no longer a fixed point, but a rotating set of coordinates. We will look at the case studies of children raised in burdensome environments and the secret psychological tax that comes with living a life of perfect, professionalized transitions. You will discover why some experts believe we are raising the most resilient generation in history, while others fear we are losing something fundamental about the human connection. The deep dive into the 2026 family structure continues. The psychological landscape of a 2026 divorce is a far cry from the traumatic fallout of the late 20th century. We have moved from the era of the broken home to the era of the expanded network. In 2026, The language we use to describe family transitions has undergone a radical rebranding. Educators, therapists, and even social media algorithms have shifted away from terms of loss and toward terms of acquisition. When a child's parents decide to divorce now, they are told they aren't losing a household. They are gaining a dual-based foundation. This shift in terminology reflects a deeper cultural norm. The belief that a well-managed separation is psychologically superior to a high-conflict marriage. To see this in action, imagine a 10-year-old named Leo living in a tech-centric city like Denver in 2026. Leo's parents, Chloe and Sam, utilized a Divorce Now platform to finalize their split in under 3 weeks. For Leo, the transition was not marked by slamming doors or hushed arguments in the kitchen. Instead, it was marked by a series of onboarding sessions, led by a professional parenting coordinator. This is a booming career field in 2026. These coordinators act as project managers for the family's emotional and logistical transition. They don't just provide therapy, they provide a roadmap. Step 1 for Leo's family was the creation of a digital family charter, a document that outlines the shared values and non-negotiables that will persist across both households. This professionalization of parenting is supported by a robust 2026 app ecosystem. Apps like Counity or Parallel Path have moved beyond simple calendar sharing. They now feature AI-driven sentiment analysis. If Sam sends a message to Chloe that the algorithm detects as passive-aggressive or high conflict, the app pauses the message and suggests a more neutral alternative. This is the Divorce Now philosophy applied to daily communication, removing the human friction to protect the psychological peace of the child. For Leo, this means his parents' communication is as clinical and efficient as a Slack channel. He doesn't see the emotional labor. He only sees the results. Case studies from 2026 developmental psychology indicate that children raised in these hypermanaged environments show high levels of adaptability. They are the masters of the pivot. Leo knows that at mom's house the rules for screen time are strict, but the food is organic and home-cooked. At dad's house, he has more digital freedom but has to be more responsible for his own laundry and scheduling. This dual citizenship mindset creates a generation of children who are incredibly resilient and socially fluent. They learn to read different environments and adjust their behavior accordingly. Historical trends suggest that while the children of the 1980s divorce era felt like collateral damage, the children of 2026 feel like stakeholders in a new corporate structure. However, we must examine the hidden psychological tax of this efficiency, particularly in the bird-nesting model we discussed earlier. Imagine if Leo stays in the same house while his parents rotate in and out. While this provides stability in his physical environment, it creates a strange psychological phenomenon known as the ghosting effect. Leo lives in a house where half of the leadership is always missing, yet their presence is everywhere. He sees his mother's favorite coffee mug on the counter, but she won't be back for 3 days. He sees his father's workout gear in the corner, but his father is currently living in the transition apartment across town. For a child in 2026, this can lead to a sense of living in a perpetual state of transition. The home is no longer a fixed point of emotional safety. It is a shared workspace where the staff changes shifts every Sunday at 5 p.m. Data from 2026 social surveys show that while childhood anxiety related to parental conflict has decreased, a new form of transition anxiety is on the rise. This is the stress of the logistics. Step by step, these children have to manage 2 sets of school supplies, 2 sets of sports equipment, and 2 different social circles depending on which neighborhood their parents live in. The Divorce Now process has made the adults' lives more efficient, but it has offloaded the logistical burden onto the children. We are seeing potential outcomes where the 2026 generation is highly competent, but emotionally weary from the constant need to stay organized. The cultural acceptance of this process is so total in 2026 that schools have completely restructured their engagement models. Gone are the days of the single emergency contact. Every school portal in the US now features a split family interface as the default setting. Parent-teacher conferences are often held via 3-way video calls, where a neutral facilitator ensures that both parents are heard without the conversation devolving into personal history. This environmental normalization tells children like Leo that their situation is not an outlier. It is the standard. In a 2026 classroom of 25 students, statistics show that 12 to 15 of them are likely navigating a Divorce Now household. This removes the sting of being different, but it also removes the traditional concept of the nuclear family as the aspirational norm. This brings us to the resilience versus connection debate. Are we raising a generation that is so adaptable they struggle to form deep, permanent bonds? If Leo sees his parents treat a 15-year marriage like a contract that reached its natural expiration date, how does that affect his own future approach to commitment? Some experts in 2026 argue that we are moving toward a more honest form of human connection, one based on current choice rather than past obligation. They suggest that Leo will grow up with a more realistic view of relationships, understanding that they require work, and that it is okay to walk away when the growth stops. Others fear that the divorce now culture creates a disposable mindset, where people are traded in like old smartphones the moment a newer model or a more convenient lifestyle becomes available. To understand the full scope, we have to look at the step-by-step psychological phases of the 2026 divorce. Phase 1 is the public announcement, which has become a highly choreographed social media event. These are not sad posts. They are joint statements of mutual respect and future collaboration. Phase 2 is the nesting or transition period, where the logistics are tested. Phase 3 is the integration of the expanded network. In 2026, it is common to see ex-spouses and their new partners all attending the same birthday party or soccer game. The cultural expectation is one of radical maturity. If you cannot get along with your ex and their new partner, you are seen as the one who is socially lagging. This pressure to perform maturity is the new social weight of the 2026 divorce now era. As we look at Leo, Sam, and Chloe, we see a family that is functional, efficient, and culturally aligned. They have successfully navigated the legal and financial hurdles of 2026. But as the dust settles on their new dual-base foundation, a new challenge is appearing on the horizon. It is a challenge that every divorce now participant eventually faces: the re-entry into the world of modern dating. How does a 40-year-old in 2026, with a complex financial tie to an ex and a co-parenting app pinging their phone every hour, find love again? And more importantly, how is the divorce now mindset changing the way we date? We are seeing the rise of the specialized dating pool, where people specifically seek out other divorcees because they share the same logistical language and the same pragmatic view of romance. In the next part, we are going to dive into the wild world of 2026 dating post-divorce. We will explore the tech that matches you based on your custody schedule, the rise of the blended family influencer, and the secret reason why your next relationship might look more like a merger and acquisition than a fairy tale. The evolution of the American heart is just getting started. The dating market of 2026 in the United States does not resemble a classic romantic comedy. It looks more like a high-stakes supply chain management seminar. If the divorce now process is the factory that dismantles the old structure, then the 2026 dating scene is the secondary market where parts are reassessed, refurbished, and reintegrated into new, more efficient systems. We are witnessing the rise of the logistics-first dating model, a cultural shift where the primary question is no longer do our souls align, but rather do our custody schedules and financial goals create a sustainable merger. To see this in practice, let us look at the case study of Maria, a 39-year-old marketing executive in Chicago in 2026. Maria has 2 children and a finalized divorce that took less than 30 days thanks to the digital mediation tools we discussed earlier. When Maria opens a dating app in 2026, she is not just looking at photos. Her profile is integrated with an AI-driven scheduling assistant. The app she uses, which we will call Synchronicity for this example, uses a proprietary algorithm to filter potential partners based on a week A and week B custody rotation. Imagine if Maria finds a profile she likes. Before she even sees his hobbies, the app gives her a compatibility score based on their calendar overlap. If this potential partner has his children on the same weekends Maria has hers, the app marks them as a low sync match. In 2026, a high sync match is someone whose child-free weekends align perfectly with yours. This is the new American romantic ideal: the ability to have a social life that does not require a complex negotiation with a co-parenting app. For Maria, dating is no longer about the mystery of the chase. It is about the optimization of her limited free time. This leads us to a fascinating new social ritual: the resume date. In the 20th century, you might wait months to discuss your credit score or your relationship with your ex-husband. In 2026, that wait is considered a waste of resources. Step by step, the first date has been transformed into a radical transparency session. Step 1 is the logistical disclosure. Within the first 20 minutes of meeting at a coffee shop, Maria and her date will have already established their residential status, whether they are birdnesting or have their own place, and their long-term financial trajectory. Step 2 is the boundary audit. In 2026, it is culturally expected to state your stance on blended families immediately. Do you want to be a bonus parent? Or are you looking for a parallel life where the children never meet? Step 3 is the digital verification. It is common for people to share a summary of their co-parenting agreement, or even a background check as a sign of high-value honesty. This isn't seen as clinical or cold. It is seen as the ultimate form of respect for the other person's time. The divorce now culture has taught Maria that everything is a contract, and she wants to know the terms before she signs on. Historical trends show a clear trajectory toward this moment. We moved from the era of courtship, which was controlled by the family and the church, to the era of dating, which was controlled by the individual, to the era of the merger, which is controlled by the data. In 2026, the US public has largely abandoned the idea of the fairy tale spark in favor of the potential outcomes of a well-matched partnership. This is reflected in the data from major relationship research firms, which show that second and third marriages in 2026 are increasingly founded on shared pragmatic interests rather than intense emotional volatility. We also have to discuss the rise of the blended family influencer. On platforms like TikTok and Instagram in 2026, the most popular accounts are no longer the perfect nuclear families. Instead, the American public is obsessed with the Jackson Smith Collective. This is a real-world scenario where two divorced couples have merged into a single social unit. They live in a cul-de-sac, share a massive group chat, and take joint vacations with all 4 parents and 6 children. They monetize this lifestyle by showing the step-by-step reality of managing such a complex network. These influencers are the architects of the new American dream. They show that the divorce now process doesn't have to end in isolation. It can end in an expanded tribe. They provide case studies on how to handle the first holiday with a new partner's ex-wife, and how to navigate the financial complexities of paying for 3 different colleges from 4 different household budgets. This cultural normalization makes it easier for people like Maria to enter the dating world, because they see a blueprint for success that didn't exist for their parents. However, this move toward the merger and acquisition style of romance has birthed another trend: living apart together, or LAT. Imagine if Maria finds a partner she truly loves, but they both realize that merging their households would be a logistical nightmare. They both have low-interest mortgages from the early 2020s, their kids are settled in different school districts, and their careers require them to be in different parts of the city. In the past, this would be a long-distance relationship that eventually failed or forced a compromise. In 2026, the LAT model is a thriving cultural norm. Maria and her partner are legally single, maintain separate residences, but are in a committed, long-term relationship. They have a shared financial plan for retirement but zero shared daily chores. This is the ultimate divorce now evolution. The realization that you can have the intimacy of a marriage without the legal or logistical entanglement that made your first divorce so complex. Data shows that LAT relationships are the fastest-growing segment of the over 40 dating market in the US. It is the perfect solution for a generation that values autonomy above all else. But what happens when the financial reality of 2026 forces these two worlds to collide? We are seeing a surge in what lawyers call the second chance prenuptial agreement. These are not about protecting a fortune, they are about protecting the stability of the children from the first marriage. Step by step, these agreements outline exactly what happens to the inherited family home, or the college fund if the second marriage also fails. This level of planning is now a standard part of the engagement process. In 2026, getting engaged is as much about meeting with a financial planner as it is about buying a ring. This atmosphere of hyper-pragmatism is changing the way we view love itself. We are moving away from the idea that love is a mystery and toward the idea that love is a skill set. The Divorce Now process is the training ground where Americans learn that skill set. They learn how to negotiate, how to set boundaries, and how to exit gracefully when a contract no longer serves both parties. This is the secret reason why the 2026 dating market is so active. People aren't afraid of failing again because they have professionalized the process of starting over. As we look at Maria and the millions like her, we see a population that is more resilient, more honest, and more technologically integrated than ever before. But as the lines between family, finance, and logistics continue to blur, a new shadow is beginning to fall over the Divorce Now movement. It is a shadow cast by the very technology that made the exit so easy in the first place. We have discussed the apps that manage your schedule and the algorithms that find your match, but what happens when the data itself becomes a weapon? What happens when your digital footprint from your divorce becomes a permanent part of your social credit in the dating world? And more importantly, how are the big tech companies of 2026 beginning to profit from your single status in ways that are both subtle and terrifying? In the next part, we are going to dive into the dark side of the Divorce Now data. We will look at the rise of the relationship score, the secret algorithms that decide who you are allowed to meet, and the hidden cost of living your most private transitions on a public platform. You will see how the 2026 economy isn't just facilitating your freedom, it's betting on it. To see the mechanics of this bet, we must examine the silent observer of every 2026 transition, the data harvest. In the United States today, your divorce is no longer a private legal matter stored in a dusty courthouse basement. It is a live streaming data set that informs a multi-billion-dollar predictive economy. When you engage in the Divorce Now process, every digital interaction, from the sentiment of your mediation chats to the specific timing of your late-night apartment searches, is being ingested by what industry insiders call the Relational Stability Index. This is the dark mirror of the credit score. It doesn't just measure your ability to pay back a loan. It measures your probability of maintaining a stable, profitable household structure. Imagine a 36-year-old software engineer named Jordan, living in Atlanta in 2026. Jordan has just initiated a streamlined digital divorce. He believes he is simply using a convenient tool to regain his freedom. However, the moment he clicks file, a cascade of algorithmic triggers begins. Within milliseconds, Jordan's consumer profile shifts from the married/homeowner category to the high-velocity individual category. This is not a neutral change. Case studies in 2026 marketing trends show that a newly single individual is worth 3 times more in annual recurring revenue to a corporation than a settled married one. Why? Because the Divorce Now participant is in a state of total structural upheaval. They need new furniture, new clothes, new subscriptions, and most importantly, they are statistically more likely to engage in impulsive, dopamine-seeking consumption to mitigate the stress of the transition. Jordan begins to see potential outcomes of this data shift within hours. His social media feeds are no longer showing family vacation ads. They are flooded with high-end solo travel packages, specialized meal prep kits for one, and premium dating app tier upgrades. This is the singlehood premium. In 2026, the economy has been fine-tuned to extract the maximum amount of capital from the newly uncoupled. Corporations have identified that the period between the initial filing and the final decree is a window of extreme psychological vulnerability. During this phase, Jordan is step-by-step being nudged by AI to redefine his identity through his purchases. The Divorce Now process has been so optimized that the speed of the legal split is directly tied to the speed of the consumer rebranding. But the data exploitation goes deeper than targeted advertising. We are seeing the rise of the relational stability score as a factor in high-stakes life decisions. In 2026, some insurance companies and even prospective employers are utilizing anonymized data from mediation platforms to assess risk. To understand the gravity of this, consider the step-by-step logic used by these algorithms. Step 1. The AI analyzes the frequency and intensity of conflict during the digital mediation. If the data shows a high level of volatility, the individual is flagged as high stress. Step 2. The system cross-references this with health data and sleep tracking. If the divorce process is causing significant health markers to decline, the individual's insurance premiums might see a subtle, non-disclosed adjustment based on predictive health outcomes. Step 3. The score is finalized, creating a digital shadow that follows the divorcee into their new life. This creates a terrifying incentive for the Divorce Now participant: performative stability. In 2026, Americans are increasingly aware that their digital behavior during a divorce will affect their future. This has led to the normalization of the sterile split. People are using AI to ghostwrite their mediation responses not just to be civil, but to protect their data integrity. They are engaging in a form of psychological theater, ensuring their digital footprint looks like a model of rational, calculated efficiency. The cultural norm of acceptance is being reinforced by the fear of being data shamed. If your divorce looks messy on paper, your 2026 social and economic mobility could be compromised. Let us look at a case study of the privacy paradox. In 2026, the U.S. public has traded the privacy of the old-world courtroom for the efficiency of the digital portal. In a traditional 20th century divorce, the details of the split were technically public record, but practically invisible unless someone went looking for them. In the Divorce Now era, the details are technically private but practically transparent to the algorithmic overseers. This has given birth to a new industry, the divorce reputation manager. Much like a SEO specialist, these professionals work with individuals to scrub or salt their digital divorce records. They help people like Jordan ensure that their transition looks like a strategic pivot rather than a domestic collapse. This is the professionalization of the exit, where even your emotional fallout is managed for maximum future marketability. Furthermore, we must examine the hidden cost of the 2026 singlehood economy. While the Divorce Now process provides immediate legal relief, it often leads to a long-term economic penalty, known as the fragmentation tax. Historical trends show that the dual-income, single household model is the most efficient way to build wealth in the United States. By accelerating the split into two separate households, the Divorce Now movement is inadvertently creating a larger class of individuals who are permanently renting or carrying higher debt loads. The economy of 2026 bets on this fragmentation. It thrives on the fact that two single people require two refrigerators, two internet subscriptions, and two sets of streaming services. The freedom of the individual is the fuel for the growth of the service economy. Imagine if the algorithm identifies that Jordan's divorce was initiated because of a desire for more career mobility. A common 2026 scenario. The data doesn't just record the fact. It predicts his next 3 years of career moves. This predictive modeling is then sold to recruiters. Jordan might find himself being headhunted for high-stress, high-travel roles that companies wouldn't offer to a married man with 3 children. His divorce has effectively changed his market value as a human resource. He is now viewed as more liquid, more deployable, and ultimately more expendable. This is the brutal reality of the 2026 cultural norm. Your personal freedom is being commodified into corporate agility. As we move toward the final chapters of this masterclass, we have to grapple with the ultimate potential outcome of this trend. If our divorces are being tracked, scored, and monetized, what happens to the concept of the family home? We have seen how people are staying together for the interest rate, and how they are moving out at the speed of light. But the physical world is starting to react to the Divorce Now movement in ways that are even more permanent than a dataset. We are seeing a radical re-engineering of the American city itself. In the next part, we are going to explore the rise of the divorce colony. We will look at how 2026 urban planners are designing micro-unit developments specifically for the newly single, complete with shared childcare hubs and legal mediation lounges built into the lobby. We will examine the case study of a city that has completely abandoned the suburban dream to accommodate the high-velocity, high-divorce lifestyle of the modern professional. And most importantly, we will reveal the secret architectural shift that is making the concept of the forever home an extinct relic of the past. The physical world is catching up to our emotional reality, and the results are unlike anything you've ever seen. The deep dive into the 2026 landscape is about to get physical. The American dream of 1950 was a 3-bedroom ranch with a manicured lawn and a white picket fence. The American dream of 2026 is a 400-square-foot modular suite with high-speed fiber, integrated AI, and a shared nursery downstairs. We are witnessing the rise of the divorce colony. These are not sad halfway houses for the brokenhearted. They are high-tech, luxury-adjacent complexes designed specifically for the logistical needs of the Divorce Now population. The physical landscape of the United States is being re-engineered to accommodate a society that values mobility and autonomy over permanent domestic anchors. Alex, a 45-year-old cybersecurity analyst in Phoenix, is a prime example of this 2026 reality. When Alex and his wife decided to decouple, they didn't follow the historical trend of looking for a smaller house in the suburbs. They realized that in the current housing market, maintaining a traditional home as a single person was a financial trap that hindered their ability to pivot. Instead, Alex moved into a development called The Pivot. This building is a case study in functional architecture. Every inch of Alex's unit is designed for a person who is moving through life at high velocity. The walls are soundproof to professional studio standards, acknowledging that many residents are remote workers who also have children visiting on high-intensity weekend rotations. The furniture is modular and built-in, meaning Alex didn't have to navigate the stress of a furniture store during his transition. He simply paid a subscription fee, and his unit was fully outfitted for a single professional. Step by step, these developments are solving the friction points of the old divorce model. Step 1 is the implementation of the shared custody suite. In the Pivot, there are communal areas specifically designed for neutral drop-offs and pickups. These are not cold parking lots or police station lobbies. They are safe, monitored, and aesthetically pleasing hubs where children can transition between parents without the emotional baggage of visiting an ex-spouse's new apartment. There are specialized staff members, trained in conflict de-escalation and child psychology, who act as subtle monitors to ensure the process remains professional. Step 2 is the embedded legal and financial support system. In the lobby of a 2026 divorce colony, you won't just find a concierge. You will find kiosks with direct links to the digital mediation platforms we explored earlier. There are on-site financial planners who specialize in post-split wealth management and tax optimization for single-head households. This is the Divorce Now ecosystem rendered in steel and glass. The building itself acts as a facilitator for your new life, removing the need to hunt for external professionals during a time of upheaval. Step 3 is the creation of a community based on shared experience. Historical trends show that isolation is the greatest risk factor for individuals after a split. The divorce colony solves this by creating a built-in social network of people in the exact same life stage. In 2026, the Pivot hosts regular seminars on co-parenting apps, investment strategies for singles, and networking events for the gig economy. Alex isn't living among nuclear families who look at him with pity. He is living among peers who look at him with understanding and shared goals. We have to look at the data coming out of cities like Austin, Charlotte, and Nashville, which are the current leaders in this architectural revolution. Developers are shifting away from suburban sprawl and toward these high-density transition hubs. In Austin, the Solo Symmetry District has seen a 40% increase in property values over the last 2 years. Real estate investment trusts are pouring billions into these projects because they recognize the Divorce Now movement is not a temporary spike. It is a permanent shift in U.S. cultural norms. The potential outcomes for these developments are massive. By catering to the uncoupled, developers can charge higher price per square foot rates. A single bedroom in a divorce colony often rents for more than a 2-bedroom in a traditional complex because the value is not in the space. It is in the integrated services. Imagine if this trend continues to its logical conclusion. We are already seeing prototypes for the fluid lease. In 2026, a tenant in a divorce colony doesn't sign a rigid 12-month contract. They sign a month-to-month subscription that allows them to move between different units, or even different cities within the same developer network. If Alex gets a new job in Denver, he can simply swap his Phoenix unit for a Denver one with a single click in his resident app. His furniture, his data, and even his legal support transition with him. This is the ultimate expression of the uncoupled, mobile American. But we must ask, what are the potential outcomes for the children raised in these divorce colonies? Case studies of the first wave of Pivot kids show a high degree of social fluency and adaptability. They are comfortable in high-tech environments and are used to living in communal, service-oriented spaces. However, some child psychologists worry about the loss of the permanent home base. In the divorce colony, the home is a service, not a sanctuary. The concept of the family home, with its height charts on the doorframe and boxes of memories in the attic, is being replaced by a sanitized, high-efficiency experience. The physical manifestation of memory is being traded for the convenience of the present. This architectural shift is also changing the way we view property ownership. In 2026, the U.S. public is moving away from the idea that a home is a 30-year commitment. The high interest rates and the Divorce Now mindset have created a generation that views real estate as a liquid asset. We are seeing a surge in fractional ownership models, where people own shares in a divorce colony rather than a specific plot of land. This allows for the mobility and freedom that the 2026 lifestyle demands. Step by step, the suburbs are being hollowed out. Historical trends show that as more people move into these urban transition hubs, traditional suburban neighborhoods are becoming aging enclaves for those who refuse to pivot. Consider the role of the 2026 smart home in this environment. In Alex's suite, the smart home system is integrated with his co-parenting app. When his children arrive for their weekend, the house automatically adjusts. The lighting changes to a warmer, family-friendly tone. The smart fridge suggests kid-friendly recipes and orders the ingredients for delivery. The internet filters tighten to age-appropriate settings. When the children leave, the house reverts to its professional solo mode. This is the Divorce Now technology making the transition seamless, almost invisible. As we look at these gleaming towers and modular suites, we have to realize that the physical world has finally caught up to the emotional reality of the American public. We have built the infrastructure for a life of transitions. We have professionalized the end of the marriage, the management of the children, the data of the split, and now the very roof over our heads. But is there a limit to this optimization? We have made it so easy to leave and so convenient to be single. But in doing so, have we made the concept of a long-term, committed partnership obsolete? If the environment is designed for the individual, can the union survive? In the next part, we are going to look at the global ripple effect. The United States has always been a cultural exporter, and the divorce now process is our latest product. We will look at how 2026 American cultural norms are influencing the family structures of Europe, Asia, and beyond. We will examine the secret pushback from traditionalist governments and the rise of the international divorce nomads, people who move between countries specifically to access the American-style efficiency of the split. You will see how the 2026 US model is redefining what it means to be a family on a global scale. The world is watching, and they are starting to follow our lead. The globalization of the American exit is about to begin. The influence of the American divorce now process has reached a tipping point where it is no longer just a domestic trend but a global standard. In 2026, the exportation of this efficiency-first lifestyle is reshaping traditional societies from Tokyo to Berlin. We are witnessing the most significant cultural export since the dawn of the Internet, the American software of the soul. This isn't about Hollywood movies or fast food. It is about the fundamental restructuring of how a human being views their obligations to another person. The United States has successfully rebranded the exit strategy as a form of personal hygiene, and the rest of the world is rapidly downloading the update. To understand how this looks on a global scale, imagine a character named Thomas. Thomas is a 40-year-old American executive living in London in 2026. He is married to a French national, and they have lived across 3 different continents in their 10 years together. When their marriage reached its natural conclusion, Thomas didn't look at the slow, tradition-bound legal systems of Europe. Instead, he utilized what we now call international jurisdictional arbitrage. Because Thomas maintains his U.S. residency in a divorce-now state, he was able to initiate a digital dissolution that was recognized globally through the 2026 Digital Decree Accord. This is a real-world potential outcome where American legal efficiency acts as a bypass for the bureaucratic friction of other nations. Thomas's case study is not an outlier. It is the new blueprint for the global elite. Historical trends show that wherever American capital goes, American social norms follow. In 2026, we are seeing the rise of the divorce nomad. These are highly mobile professionals who choose their residency not based on tax rates alone, but on the speed and efficiency of the domestic exit laws. If you are a high-net-worth individual in a globalized economy, you cannot afford to have your assets and your mobility frozen for 3 years by a conservative court in a traditionalist country. You seek the American model because it treats you like a sovereign individual rather than a ward of the state. Step by step, we can track how this American philosophy infiltrates other cultures. Step 1 is the cultural infiltration through media. In 2026, global streaming platforms are dominated by US-centric content that celebrates the pivot and the fresh start. When a viewer in Seoul or Mumbai watches a high-production series about a woman in Los Angeles successfully rebranding her life after a 10-day divorce, it plants the seed of a new possibility. The historical trend of the long-suffering spouse is being replaced by the aspirational trend of the emancipated individual. Step 2 is the technological infrastructure. The US-based AI mediation platforms we discussed in previous parts are now being localized for global markets. In 2026, a startup in Silicon Valley doesn't just build a divorce app for California. They build a multilingual, cross-jurisdictional platform that understands the nuances of Sharia law, civil law, and common law. They offer a sanitized, professionalized version of the split that appeals to the global middle class who are tired of the shame and the slow pace of their local institutions. This is the Silicon Valleyfication of the human heart, and it is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Step by step, the economic realignment follows. In 2026, global luxury brands have noticed that their most consistent growth comes from the uncoupled segment. In Paris and Milan, marketing campaigns are shifting focus. They are no longer just selling the dream of the honeymoon. They are selling the dream of the solo debut. We are seeing potential outcomes where the hospitality industry offers divorce packages that include legal consultation, psychological counseling, and a high-end solo retreat. This is the American divorce now economy going global, turning a personal transition into a premium consumer experience. Consider the potential outcomes for a country like Japan. Historically, Japan has had a deep-seated cultural resistance to divorce, often viewing it as a failure that affects the entire family lineage. But in 2026, faced with a shrinking workforce and the need for greater female labor participation, the Japanese government is looking at the US model as a way to unlock economic potential. If women are trapped in unhappy marriages that stifle their career growth, the economy suffers. By adopting American-style divorce now norms, Japan is attempting to modernize its social fabric to match its economic needs. This is a case study in how the American exit strategy is viewed as a tool for national survival. However, this globalization is not without its friction. We are seeing a fierce pushback from traditionalist governments and religious institutions who view the Divorce Now movement as a form of cultural imperialism. In some regions, there are efforts to block US-based mediation apps and to penalize citizens who utilize international jurisdictional arbitrage. This has created a new kind of social divide: the globalized uncoupled versus the localized traditionalists. In 2026, your view on the American divorce model is the ultimate litmus test for your alignment with the modern world. The American public's acceptance of this process has created a standard that is hard to ignore. When the world looks at the US, they see a nation that has professionalized the comeback. They see people like Thomas who can end a decade-long marriage on a Tuesday and be leading a new global initiative by Friday. This resilience is incredibly attractive to a world that is moving faster than ever before. We have made the split look clean, productive, and even stylish. But as we export this model, we are also exporting the hidden taxes and the psychological complexities we've explored throughout this masterclass. We are creating a planet of high-velocity individuals who are more connected to their data than to their neighbors. We are spreading the birdnesting model to cities that weren't built for it, and the co-parenting apps to cultures that value the extended family over the individual contract. The US is essentially terraforming the global social landscape to be more compatible with the individualist, high-consumption American way of life. This leads us to a startling realization. If the entire world adopts the Divorce Now process, what happens to the concept of the nation-state itself? If our most fundamental contracts, our marriages, are becoming digital, global, and easily dissolved, does the idea of national identity even matter? We are moving toward a world where your primary allegiance is not to your country or even your spouse, but to your own personal growth trajectory and the digital systems that facilitate it. As Thomas sits in his London office, looking at his finalized digital decree from a court in Delaware, he realizes he is a citizen of a new kind of world. He is the first generation of the globalized individual, free from the geographic and social anchors that held his parents in place. But as he prepares for his next chapter, a final question looms over him and the millions like him. We have mastered the art of the exit. We have optimized the logistics of the split. We have globalized the philosophy of the pivot. But as we reach the end of this evolution, we have to look at the legacy we are leaving behind. In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to look at the ultimate conclusion of the Divorce Now movement. We will explore the long-term legacy of a society that has perfected the art of walking away. We will look at the 2026 data on the first generation of children who have grown up entirely within this system and the secret reason why the most successful people in the future might be the ones who choose to do the one thing the Divorce Now process didn't prepare them for. You will discover the final, hidden truth about the American heart and what it means for the future of the human race. This is the conclusion you've been waiting for. The legacy of the split is about to be revealed. The legacy of the split is not found in the legal filings or the modular furniture of a transition suite. It is found in the eyes of the first generation of Americans who have never known a world where marriage was permanent. To see this legacy in its purest form, we must look at the case study of James. In 2026, James is 20 years old, a student at a major university in the Midwest, and a true native of the Divorce Now era. James's parents utilized the first wave of digital mediation in 2016. His childhood was a series of perfectly managed handoffs, mediated by apps and governed by the strict, professionalized neutrality we have discussed. James does not view divorce as a tragedy. To him, the dissolution of a relationship is as natural and inevitable as a software update. He is the prototype of the new American citizen. Highly adaptable, emotionally resilient, and fundamentally unattached to the concept of the lifelong union. This brings us to the final hidden truth about the American heart in 2026. We have successfully traded depth for velocity. The potential outcomes of this trade-off are only now becoming clear. While the Divorce Now process has eliminated the prolonged suffering of the mid-20th century, it has also introduced a new kind of existential thinning. In 2026, data from social research institutes shows that the average duration of a high-commitment relationship for those under 30 has dropped by 35% compared to historical trends. We are seeing a rise in what sociologists call liquid commitment. This is the step-by-step realization that if the exit is always available, always easy, and always socially accepted, the motivation to engage in the difficult, transformative work of repair is diminished. Step by step, the liquid commitment model functions like this. Step 1, the friction point. Every relationship hits a wall of boredom, conflict, or misalignment. Step 2, the internal assessment. In the 2026 mindset, the individual asks, is the cost of staying and fixing this higher than the cost of a divorce now pivot? Step 3, the digital exit. Because the infrastructure we've built makes the exit so efficient, the answer to that question is increasingly yes. The legacy for people like James is a life of many chapters but perhaps fewer deep roots. James is a master of the fresh start, but he struggles with the concept of the long haul. However, the 2026 economy continues to bet on James. The historical trends we've analyzed show that a society of high-velocity individuals is a society of high-velocity consumers. The US GDP in 2026 is bolstered by the fragmentation tax. We are a nation of 2 household families, meaning we need double the infrastructure for the same number of people. This is the silent engine of the American recovery. Every time a couple decides to divorce now, they create a surge in economic activity. They lease 2 apartments, they buy 2 sets of appliances, they subscribe to 2 of everything. The freedom of the individual has become the primary driver of the service economy. We have professionalized the split because, quite frankly, the split is profitable. But as with every major cultural shift, 2026 is seeing the birth of a radical counterculture. This is the rise of the covenant movement. Just as the divorce now process reached its peak efficiency, a small but growing segment of the US public began to move in the opposite direction. These are individuals who are explicitly rejecting the frictionless exit. They are signing what they call hard contracts, legal agreements that intentionally introduce hurdles to divorce, such as mandatory 2-year waiting periods or high financial penalties for a no-fault split. They are looking at the potential outcomes of the divorce now world and choosing to opt out. This movement is the 2026 equivalent of the slow food movement or the digital detox. It is a reaction to the hyper-efficiency of the modern world. Case studies of covenant communities in states like Tennessee and Ohio show a fascinating trend. These couples are utilizing the same 2026 technology as everyone else, but they are using it for the opposite purpose. They use AI to monitor their communication for signs of drift and to schedule mandatory deep connection sessions. They are using the tools of the divorce now era to build a fortress around their marriages. This tension between the high-velocity majority and the high-depth minority is the new cultural frontline of the United States. It is no longer about liberal versus conservative, it is about the liquid versus the solid. As we conclude this deep dive masterclass, we have to look at the final step-by-step breakdown of the American exit strategy. Step 1, the cultural acceptance of the pivot as a form of self-actualization. Step 2, the legal and technological streamlining of the process to remove friction. Step 3, the economic commodification of the single status. Step 4, the psychological adaptation of the next generation to a life of transitions. This is the blueprint of 2026 America. We have mastered the art of moving on. We have ensured that no citizen is ever truly stuck, that every mistake can be corrected, and that every chapter has an end. The hidden truth is that the United States has redefined what it means to be successful in love. In 1926, success was staying together until death. In 2026, success is the ability to navigate a series of meaningful, productive, and growth-oriented relationships without losing your financial stability or your social credit. We have made divorce a professional skill. We have taught the American heart to be as efficient as a balanced ledger. We are the first civilization in history to treat the family unit as a flexible, modular entity that can be reconfigured at the speed of a digital signature. But the question remains for James and his generation. When the exit is always open, where do you find the strength to stay? If the world is designed to facilitate your departure, what keeps you in the room? We have provided every tool for the split, but we are only just beginning to realize that we might have forgotten to provide the tools for the endurance. The legacy of the divorce now era is a nation of people who are free, mobile, and autonomous, but who are also constantly looking for the next pivot. We are a country of seekers who have perfected the art of the search but are still learning the cost of the find. As we look toward the next decade, the impact of these 2026 norms will only deepen. We are seeing the rise of the autonomous household, the globalized uncoupled, and the legislative overhaul of the family contract. We have moved through the age of the institutional marriage and the age of the companionate marriage, and we have entered the age of the administrative marriage. This is the final potential outcome of the American experiment in individualism. We have finally achieved the total autonomy we always claimed to want. What happens next is the story of how we handle that freedom. Will we use our newfound efficiency to build better, more honest lives? Or will we find ourselves in a perpetual cycle of restarts, forever optimizing but never arriving? The 2026 U.S. cultural landscape is the ultimate laboratory for the human heart. We are the pioneers of the professionalized split, and the world is watching to see if we can thrive in the world we've built. The data is in, the case studies are written, and the infrastructure is ready. The era of divorce now is here to stay, and it is reshaping every facet of our reality. But even as we celebrate our independence and our mobility, a new question is surfacing in the digital noise. It is a question about the one thing that even the most advanced 2026 algorithm cannot solve. It is a question about the future of human intimacy in a world of high-velocity transitions. How do we build something that lasts in a world designed for the pivot? In our next masterclass series, we are going to dive deep into the secret rise of the new intentionality. We will look at the underground movement of people who are using 2026 tech to hack their own brains for long-term loyalty. We will explore the science of the deep bond and why the next multi-billion-dollar industry in America won't be about helping you leave. It will be about helping you stay. You thought you knew the limits of the human heart, but the next evolution is going to change everything. The journey into the future of commitment is just beginning.